You can either live a comfortable lie, or you can live a life where you strive with courage to live in line with the truth.
What was the thing that was missing?
Being good at something is not a reason to do it.
This is Jacob. He spent his 20s chasing the right career, from law to tech sales to traveling the world. Now he helps people break free from the life they think they're supposed to live.
I think for content, you're really an entertainer. You're not actually solving a problem for somebody.
Dream career. What is dream? Like, what do you mean by that word?
0 to 1 is the most difficult thing.
If you could have given yourself advice at that time, what would it be, and would you have taken it?
And I see it all the time. People want to talk the talk, they want to think the thoughts, and then it comes time to do something, and they just can't do it. Take a backpack, book a one-way flight, and don't come home for at least a month. And go somewhere that is in Asia or Africa, or I guess Latin America. You will not regret it. You will love it.
Were you always interested in travel?
The love of travel really came from being fascinated by elephants as a kid, just an innate obsession. And it really was African elephants. So that drove me wanting to go there, check it out. And then the other part that really drove me to be interested in travel was studying abroad in London in 2018. So I got really interested in the UK, but I started learning a lot about the British Empire, which taught me about India, Uganda, all these different places. And then as time went on, through my strange career progression, the travel just became the dominant force and informed a lot of what was to come.
What's next on the list?
Next on the list is big. It is a 2-week trip where a friend and I are being given, in exchange for content, a 4x4 pickup truck equipped with camping equipment, so fully kitted out for the wild. And we're going to roam around Namibia and Botswana, 2 giant countries in Southern Africa, for 2 weeks. I've never done anything like it. I've never had a car that long on a trip. I've never been in those kind of environments with a car. I've never camped that long. It's going to be just all time.
That's wild. I'm excited for you. I mean, it's good that the person you're going with is a professional traveler. I mean, like, I'm sure they will have some lay of the land, even if they haven't been to those specific countries.
I'm actually the one that pushed him to do it. So he's got a lot of experience. He's a lot younger than me. This is my friend, the Afghanistan guy, actually, the one that just got back. He's a lot younger. He's like 9-10 years younger than me. So this is his first time doing that. And that was the appeal for him. He's interested in travel and he hasn't broken into Africa much. And I've got more experience there than anywhere else. So I'll be leading the way. But these are very cool countries. These are some of the safest countries. These countries both have the least population density of any countries on the continent. There's just very few people relative to how big they are.
Well, I'm looking forward to seeing some of that content when you get back, and that you can make that trip happen. And you basically never stopped traveling. It seems like it's still a part of your life, but you're focused now a lot on writing and on creating content. And you have a Substack called Dream Career. What is dream? Like, what do you mean by that word? Because I think it's a loaded one.
I'm still not totally set on it because on the one hand, I know what it means to me. On the other hand, I know it holds connotations with people that can be off-putting. But a dream is the definition is a cherished aspiration, ambition, or ideal. And that's a very palatable definition. We all know what that means. It doesn't sound like a warlock or a dragon, like a weird thing we don't understand. So that's what it is, a cherished ideal for, in this case, what your profession is, your vocation, your calling, your contribution to society. And my philosophy is that is hugely related to the quality of your overall life. Not that you can't have a good life in other ways with the wrong job, but you're not going to have really the life you want without the right job. And that's not just all about money and how rich you are. It's actually more about lifestyle, and income is a factor, but it's not exclusive. You know, for example, an obvious one that so many people take for granted as something that's completely unavoidable, which I think is such a tragedy, is commuting. So if you commute, which I used to when I was working at the state attorney's office in downtown Miami, an hour there and an hour back, 2 hours of my day in a car. Yeah, you know, you could reframe it as like, oh, it's an opportunity to make phone calls and podcasts. That's right. But it's a restricted opportunity. over my time. It's 2 hours of my waking day in a car. That sucks. So now consider a job where you don't have that. That's 2 hours of your day back. Maybe you make the same amount of money, but your lifestyle is better. So that all goes into what a dream career is, what a dream life is.
Tell me a little bit about how you got to where you are now, because you have a really fascinating, non-linear, non-traditional trajectory.
So I went to undergrad at Florida State. I studied psychology for the exclusive reason that I wanted to get good grades to go to law school. Why did I want to go to law school? No reason. I didn't know what to do. Both my parents were and still are lawyers. Neither of them encouraged me to go. It was lazy thinking. It was a lack of education and perspective that I think is pervasive through a lot of society, not just in law school, but in how you decide about your life. Went to law school. Along the way, I mean, my last semester in college, I studied in London. That was hugely informative for my life. On my way to law school, I volunteered in South Africa for a month with elephants. So there's always been an interest in elephant conservation. And I basically at some point in college decided, well, I'm going to go to law school. I'm going to stick with that. But I'm going to try and gear this towards elephant conservation, bringing the two together, because I've always been obsessed with elephants. And I thought, well, there's a way to do this, because poaching, habitat destruction, legal enforcement of that is a thing. Why can't that be my thing? That could be my in. Just finished volunteering for a month in South Africa with elephants and go through law school. Fine. Published a paper on international law and elephants in the Law Review Journal. You can read it online. How international law can save the African elephant. I had a job that I had been networking for and done some remote work for in Kenya that would have been a great, super unique opportunity. So I did that for 2 years. Fascinating job. Tons of great stories and perspectives. But after 2 years and networking for other jobs, I decided I was not cut out to work a job. I could work a job like anybody else for a period of time. That's fine. We've all got to do that at some point. But long term, it wasn't going to work. So this was my first real idea, like a quarter life crisis of, okay, I'm not going to stay a lawyer because I never meant to be one. I'm not going to pursue elephant conservation, which I've been doing for 5 years. What do I do? So I thought, let me get a job in sales. Started working there. Good job. Interesting. Learned a lot. While I was there, was thinking about travel being what I would do. I was initially thinking travel agency. That kind of got boring pretty quickly. Thought I don't really want to just book trips for people. At the time, I found somebody who was a travel content creator on Instagram. I hadn't seen anything like this at the time. This was 2023. And I thought, oh, I can do that. I like to travel. So I've been around enough and I'm confident enough that I can go and solo travel and make content. And so I laid my plan out. I would quit the job when my lease expired in the middle of 2024, and I would start with a big trip to get experience and to get a lot of content. And then that just began a period where I was doing exclusively travel content for the better part of a year and a half, and which brought me to where I'm at today, which I decided along the way that I was a lot more interested in helping people figure out their version of the same thing, figuring out what you actually want to do with your life professionally and letting that build the scaffolding and the infrastructure of your overall life, or traveling, being an influencer. All these are things that people find appealing, and it might be right for some of them, but I could pull from that and help people. So that's a quick run through of my journey.
Yeah, because you had all of the titles. Like any one of those jobs would have been a respectable way for you to spend your time and earn money. And for some people, that's going to be their passion. But for you, it wasn't. What was the thing that was missing? Like how do you go from, I find this thing interesting. Like, let's take the travel content example. Like that must have been fascinating. You must have been getting so many different experiences, changing the way you think, meeting different types of people, immersing yourselves in different types of culture. How do you go from, wow, I'm ingesting all of this, to I need to stop ingesting all of this, or I need to stop this lifestyle?
Few reasons. One, I was getting tired. I mean, I was traveling a lot, and I should have been traveling more for my goals and growth and opportunities that come with that. About being a content creator, I recommend it. I think it's going to be a component of any business today for the most part. But if the content is the business, which is effectively travel content and many other kinds, even lifestyle influencer type of thing, you have to ask yourself, any business, I think is fair to say, what is the problem being solved? Right. And so I think for content, you're really an entertainer. You're not actually solving a problem for somebody. And so you're gambling on that model that, are these people entertained? or are they not? Whereas if I have a problem to solve, it might take a while to get to the right people, but assuming it's the right kind of problem, it is there to be solved for the people. In travel, you could go a long time trying to figure out how to entertain people and not build what you want to build. I was getting, like I said, I was getting tired. I'd been traveling a lot, and I was getting to the point where I didn't want this thing that I love to become a burden. I wasn't growing the way I wanted to. That was another factor. I mean, if I had, accumulated 1 million followers and I was bringing in money, I probably could have used that as motivation to stick it out a bit longer, put money away. But even then, so this was the big thing. Even then, I was telling myself, even if that's the case, you can't do this forever because you want to have a family. And dad can't be flying to Lebanon and Guinea on a Wednesday when the baby needs the diaper change. And so I want to be a present, like, father and husband in the future. So if I'm already getting tired and I'm already not making enough money and I'm already understanding what's to come, stop now. And the travel blends nicely because it illustrates the idea of you can do what you want with your life. You are not limited by your circumstances and your current standing. And so I have all these references and stories and videos, and I'll continue to travel. And in this upcoming trip, that's a lot of the framing. If I was working a job I didn't like, wouldn't be able to do it. If I was afraid of going to places like Africa, I wouldn't be able to do it. So all these things, they all tie together. But that's how I off-ramped from travel content.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds like you had a lot of awareness around yourself and like how you were feeling, what you wanted, your values, and like going forward, whether your current lifestyle was aligning with what your values were. So like, for example, wanting to have a family, wanting to be able to set some roots might not go with travel content creating. But you bring up an interesting point around what happens when the thing you love becomes your lifeblood, becomes the way you make money, and how that can sometimes take you away from the thing you love, ironically. And do you feel like that's maybe part of what happened with travel? Like travel became playing to the algorithm versus you enjoying the experience? I mean, lifestyle aside of like being tired of the physical aspect of it.
Not playing to the algorithm because I was explicit from the beginning that I won't go anywhere I don't want to go. So that protected a bit against that. It's an interesting subject. I think you could probably do a whole podcast on this. A lot of people have a lot of opinions on, the quote, for example, if you love your work, you'll never work a day in your life. It's not true. It is maybe for a tiny minority of people, like just enough people for somebody to have that idea. But that's not a realistic aspiration. I love what I do, and I also work, and I also don't like some of it. Like some of it depends on the day. It's tough. I think the way to do it where you waste the least amount of time, money, and energy is a big part of what I do when I work with people, which is understand who you are. What are your interests, passions, obsessions, experience, abilities, skills, all that, every single thing. Don't discount anything. And then understand what kind of lifestyle you want and really think about what that means. So for example, if you love to bake, but you don't want to be stuck in a bakery, you shouldn't open a bakery. If you do, now you're tied down. But what if you bake as you go? What if you're traveling and baking different things in different places? Now you have geographic freedom and it's more of a social media business. Or what if you're consulting with colleges that are baking, or what if you're teaching? So there's different ways to do the same thing. And so for me with travel, yeah, it just didn't line up long-term goals and short-term output. I don't regret it at all. I'm so glad I did it. I recommend it to everybody. I was actually just talking to my cousin last night, and his son is about to graduate college, has a job lined up that he'll start a few months after he graduates. And they've traveled quite a bit when they were younger, but this kid has never done a solo trip. And I said, if I could give him one piece of advice, I would say, take a backpack, book a one-way flight, and don't come home for at least a month, and go somewhere that is in Asia or Africa, or I guess Latin America, but I prefer Asia, Africa, because it's old world. And just go. Do it. You will not regret it. You will love it.
I hate to admit it, I've never traveled by myself. Now that I think of it, like I'm almost 40. I've never traveled. I mean, I've gone to a destination by myself,
right?
But I'm always meeting someone there.
Well, it's not too late. The thing that you will have a challenge with if it's actually something you're interested in is the older you get, uh, the more you believe your own excuses. We all have them to some extent, even for people that strive to not. And it just depends how bad you want it, in my opinion. You know, if somebody wants to take a solo trip, they will take it. It doesn't have to be as long, doesn't have to be as crazy, but it's just the experience. Even going somewhere for a week by yourself is a really cool experience. Even if you have a partner, you're married, still very cool.
Yeah. I feel like it would be beneficial, even if it's like a few days, like you said, just
Yeah.
to be on your own. Because I've always been like very independent in a lot of ways. But for travel, for whatever reason, maybe it's because the time to travel is always limited. So you end up doing it with other people. It's not a very intentional, like I'm doing this for the sake of just travel and I make it a social thing. But food for thought. But what you're saying is that don't think about the work you want to do. Think about the lifestyle you want to live. And then reverse
Both.
engineer
Both. Literally
both.
do both at the exact same time. You
Okay.
could do
So,
what you could do one first and then the other. Either way, I think depends on the person, but both at the same time is critical. And I know this from experience. I went after a job in elephant conservation for 5 years to find out that I didn't want to live the lifestyle of an elephant conservationist. Well, I could have fucking learned that with really not that much thought. I mean, you know, you never know if you're going to convince somebody, but no, I don't want to be on a fixed poor salary dependent on somebody else telling me what to do for the rest of my life. It's just not what I want. And then I think, okay, well, what if I have my own business and I'm making my own money and then I can donate to elephant organizations or start my own? I could maybe do a similar thing. I could donate money. There's different ways to do the same thing is the takeaway. And you don't know unless you try. The alternative, which is what most people will do if they're lucky, the unfortunate people will do nothing and they'll be miserable and have regret. But the people in the middle will just keep doing, well, they'll do what I did. They'll take action and they'll learn from their mistakes. And the idea is you can do that. The alternative is maybe you can work with me or somebody else and try and save some time that comes there. Try and save some time, maybe save some money, get there faster.
yeah, because I mean, it's the difference between having a teacher or a coach versus doing it
Exactly.
on your own. You're benefiting from their experience and from their exposures because there's only so much time you have in your life. There's only so many experiences you can have, and everything comes with an opportunity cost. So you doing elephant conservation means you couldn't have done something else at the same time because you had to be in that experience. You traveling means you couldn't have had a kid during that time because it required that you were out and about and traveling and doing all those things. Having someone to guide you can be really helpful in maybe just staying closer to what you want to do while also considering options that you might not have thought of. I speak as someone who I definitely just followed the path that I thought I was supposed to follow. Like I did the job, I got the degrees, I was good at it, and it's that concept of careful what you're good at because you'll get paid for it. And
Yep.
if you don't enjoy that thing that you're getting paid for, now you're stuck.
That was me as a lawyer in a sense. I was good at it. I wasn't as great as I could have been because I didn't care. I mean, I cared. I had a job where I guess any job as a lawyer, you're responsible for people, but in particular, being a state attorney, there is a level of responsibility for people's lives that I'm potentially incarcerating. So I did make sure that the output I was producing was equitable and enough so that I was doing my job well, but I didn't care about it enough that I was maxing out my talent, but I was clearly good at it. I was clearly talented. And had I really wanted to, I could have been one of the best at doing it. Just didn't want to do it. And so when I quit, people were pretty surprised. They were like, you're a stud. You know, you're crushing this. You're going to do great. Why are you leaving? Because being good at something is not a reason to do it. I actually saw a video not so long ago. This guy has like a pretty big account online. I forget what it is. Something lawyer, where he basically stands in a park and he just answers questions. Like, ask me a question. I'm a lawyer. Yeah. Somebody said that they asked him, they're like, oh, do you like what you do? He goes, well, I don't like what I do, but I'm good at what I do. And, you know, it's like, dude, what a cowardly take. Okay. So you're good at something means you have to do it. How about you find, so your skills as a lawyer don't apply to anything else. Communication, critical thinking, dispute resolution, none of that applies to anything else. No, it's just lazy. I made a post about this the other day. It got some heat. Good. I said, and this was something I discussed with my former boss at my sales job, who was an associate lawyer in London, so a totally different kind of lawyer than I was, different country. And we both agreed. We're just like, yeah, about 90% of lawyers don't want to be lawyers, we would say. I think is a fair statement.
It's a huge
90% don't want to be
percentage.
lawyers. It doesn't mean that, yeah, I don't think, it doesn't mean they hate it, but they don't want to do it. If they could do something else, if they believe they could do something else, they would. And the little world I have on Threads just, oh, this is bullshit. This is this and that. And I was like, it's true.
I wonder if sometimes people get stuck on, so like he's saying, I don't want to be a lawyer, but I'm good at it. They get stuck on the title of lawyer, but as you said, not thinking about all the skill set that comes with being a lawyer. Maybe that's what someone likes. Like maybe they like applying critical thinking to a task, but what they don't like is litigation, or what they don't like is working as a lawyer. Again, the lifestyle that comes with the lawyer, or the responsibilities that come with being a lawyer. But maybe they actually do like something in there. But if you don't figure it out and you can't separate the two, you're either going to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, I'm leaving law behind. I'm going to go become a yoga teacher, which is also fine if that's what you want. But I'm guessing it's more likely that there's something in there that you liked about it, either a skill that you brought to the table or something that it was giving you. You're pensive. What do you think?
When I went to law school, because I was there for such a strange reason, I would ask the people I was in school with, why did you decide to go to law school? The majority answer was I didn't know what else to do. The second most common answer was my parents told me I should go. That was almost everyone. Not everybody, but almost everyone. I think we don't get a good education. I wrote a Substack article about this today that might piss some people off, but I don't care. That mass education destroys children. That's my take. There is no argument, as far as I'm concerned. George Mack wrote a great article once about 11 things that you're punished for in school that will make you successful as an adult. And so, aside from the curriculum, which is mostly nonsense and garbage, not all, but mostly, that part one, and part two, all the little things, for example, questioning the biggest authority figure in the room, by and large, punished. Breaking the uniformity of the one size fits all schedule, punished. Asking permission to go to the bathroom. In life, you don't do that. School, you get punished if you don't do it. All these different things, and you realize, okay, so you're doing this from kindergarten or preschool to college, even 20 years of indoctrination in these systems. And you can debate whether or not there was malicious intent in setting this all up. I would kind of argue, I don't know about malicious, but manipulative. I mean, the mass education model is based on the Prussian system, which explicit goal was to make an obedient soldiery that had a uniform understanding. And so it's been adapted in the American system and then the global system. But at its core, that's what it is. And I think part of that is you don't have an education on how to think about your life. And so you have all these kids coming out of high school and going into college and then the world, and they just don't know how to think about their life. They're too young. And so if nobody had ever stopped to really explain to them, for example, a big frame of reference I have is if I don't know what to do in a situation, I ask 90-year-old me what to do. And the answer is always very clear because I'm thinking long term, delayed gratification, big picture in that case. If I don't do that, if I don't have that frame of reference, all my decisions could just be guided by emotions and fear, which is most people. And so when you get into the workforce and figuring out, well, I'm good at this, but I don't like this part of that, you're trying to fly with like one wing. You're just doing circles. You don't have the tools to figure this out. And maybe you learn it from somebody else, or maybe you fail enough times that you do figure it out. But I think that so many more people could and don't, being handicapped early on.
So is the argument that mass education, because of the way it exists, is detrimental to children and to society? Or that if we were to adapt it and to include topics around self-awareness, around emotional intelligence, around, I mean, some of these concepts are spiritual, metaphysical, religious even. If we were to incorporate that, would that kind of fix the system? Or is there an alternative system that you have in mind?
So I do have an alternative system that even if you were to overhaul the existing one, I would argue that the alternative is the best. Although if there was the ability to significantly overhaul this system in not just curriculum, but in the structure of it, it would be a lot. It would be so much better that it would have real positive impact. I would still argue that the alternative is better, and that's homeschooling. Because, Khabib Nurmagomedov is a Hall of Fame UFC fighter, champion. And I had been interested in homeschooling before he said this, but when he said it, it really stuck with me. He's from Dagestan, like a very conservative Muslim part of the Caucasus region in southern Russia. So very different culture, very different outlook, very traditional. And he said this idea that you send your children, he wasn't just referring to Western people, but just in general. You send your children to these places for 8 hours a day, your little children, and you don't know who's teaching them. You don't know anything about these people at all, where they've come from, what they believe, how they speak. You don't know anything. These are your children. Every day they spend more time with these people than they do with you. That's insane. And it is. That's crazy. You wouldn't just do that. You think, oh, well, it's a school and, they're responsible. There's countless examples of them being a negative, condescending person that has a huge impact on your 10-year-old daughter or son. And you're the parent. You're supposed to be in charge. You're supposed to lead this person. There's not going to be any perfect, but you wouldn't let somebody treat your kid that way on the street. But you have no idea who these people are. You never talk to them and you have no say. What if they're teaching something you don't like? Can all the parents come together and tell the school don't teach this? Nope. Pretty much no. Doesn't exist. That's insane to me. Crazy that we just think that's normal. And so when he pointed this out, I thought, yeah, I'm not with that. That's not good.
On the flip side, and I think there's like elements to what you're saying that make sense on that, but then on the flip side, I don't know that every parent is necessarily equipped to homeschool.
No, but I would say two things. One, again, I'm only speaking to the groups of people that are agentic and self-aware and have some of these minimal traits. I'm not talking to the other people. I can't help them unless they want help. Number one. Number two, figure it out. Because you do figure things out that are important to you, right? I mean, if something's important, if I put a gun to your head and I say you need to do this, you'll do it. You'll figure it out. You'll stop worrying about all these other things. You will figure it. It's a motivation issue. And so, my cousin is doing this right now where they're not in the easiest situation at all in several ways. And yet it's full time with these two little beautiful people. And they're figuring it out because it really matters to them. And so I think it comes back to just this selfishness that pervades the West in general that's spreading to other cultures. But I think is one of the greatest weakness in our civilization, which is it's all about me. Well, what if you have to live in a smaller house? What if you have to move? What if you have to get a different job for your children? People used to cross oceans and go places they'd never even seen a photo of for their children. Not that long ago. Some of them are still alive. And yet we can't even imagine trading in the Audi for a Honda. Literally. I mean, to me, it just gets me going. Like the level of selfishness. And I don't have kids yet, but I do really look forward to when I have them because then I can really walk the walk.
Yeah.
And for anybody that had any doubts, stick around.
Would you put your kids on social media?
No. No. My kids are going to be Amish.
No, I'm with you. No social media. The longer you can keep them away from social media, I mean, like all of the studies, behavioral science studies point to the same thing. The longer you can keep kids away from social media and tech in general, especially as they're developing, especially in those first few years, the better.
I actually don't think that's going to be the primary. I mean, it's going to be a primary concern for my kids, but I think the AI wave to come is going to produce far more damaging consequences. I think social media is a great way to see how that could play out. I think it's already playing out in the way that it will play out with AI, but I think the damage from AI to most people, especially kids, will be far, far, far greater.
Yeah, I think we've only scratched the surface in terms of the impact that AI will have not only on jobs and career, but on us socially, like on the fabric of our society. Something, going back to kids and going back to the things that are missing in how they're educated, in what the world might hold for them in the future, politically, economically, socially. It sounds like all the more reason for us as present day adults. I'm assuming anyone listening to this is over 18. I hope so. Think about what it is that's important to you. Consider yourself, because you can't teach something to a child that you can't practice yourself. Children learn by observation more than they learn by the words that you say. So you could say, hey, you need to be self-aware, but that doesn't mean anything. What does self-aware mean to a child that's never seen their parent be frustrated and then say, you know what? I'm getting very frustrated right now. Let me take a breath. Like, if they've never seen their parent do that, what are the chances that they are eventually going to figure that out? Slimmer than if they had observed it, I would venture to guess.
100%. I think modeling after the example is the best. So if you're facing a situation where you need to embody courage, you may embody courage normally, but I think there's a lot of power in being explicit about what that means, where you've done it before, how it works, understand the mechanisms of it, and then apply it. And that's not, courage is just one example. Self-awareness, agency, discipline, perspective. I think all these things are huge. And then for kids going in the future, I mean, it's a very uncertain landscape, but I think a very good guidepost is, if you can't describe why what you do is irreplaceable in some way from you as an individual, then that job is in big danger. I guess aside from maybe things like working with your hands, I think eventually those could be replaced, but I think that will be the later stage. So being a plumber, an electrician, these types of things, those are, I think, are great ideas. But as far as people in the digital world, if you can't describe why what you do is one of one, there's a computer coming for your head. It's already happening.
Yeah. I mean, the rate of change has just been accelerated. Like, there's always been progress and
Right.
there's always been change. Like, the Industrial Revolution brought change, but not at this speed. And I don't know that we are even biologically equipped to handle that speed of change. Like, we don't have time to adapt. And then we start talking about things like Neuralink. I mean, that's where I really start to worry, where I'm like, we are not biochemically and emotionally and spiritually prepared for that.
There's a good chance my final career arc is being like a homesteading farmer, because I'm not going to participate in, if a society is dominated by people with things like Neuralink, I'm not interested. I'm already like 1,000 years old as a 30-year-old. It's only going to get worse. I don't have an issue with technology. I'm not interested, and it's objectively not positive. And you see a lot of people online that are trying to counter this doomer idea of AI and what it's going to do. And I think their perspective is well-founded. I think it's limited in the fact that, as we were discussing a little bit earlier, it applies to a very narrow set of people. And so if you have some level of virtue, self-awareness, agency, these rare traits in a human being, then AI will be beneficial to you because you have the presence of mind to more or less understand where it crosses a line into damaging your being, and just use it to exploit menial tasks. So if you can get a robot that's AI programmed to do your laundry and do your dishes and little menial things, that's going to be helpful for you and you'll benefit from that. Most people will not, because they're not embodying those traits. And the way we know that is social media. Social media is the blueprint. I think it's an easy way to look at it. Most people, I think social media is a net negative. It doesn't have to be. Yeah. It holds the same potential to be a positive as it does for me or anyone else. But as it applies, it is a net negative. It's comparison. It's destroying your attention span. It's destroying your social skills. It's consuming all your time. It's distorting your perspective, because there's no discipline. There's no discipline, I think, is the biggest thing in that case. And so I think AI will be the same, but it'll be worse, because now it's not an entertainment, distraction, social inhibitor. It's a thinking inhibitor. You're not going to have to think, and you already weren't good at it to begin with. And so now you're just going to get worse.
Yeah. You talked about the people that you would work with being virtuous and agentic. What does that mean?
So I didn't grow up with religion, really. I'm Jewish, and we did some holidays and stuff, but there wasn't anybody that was really practicing the religion adherent to the book, what I would call doctrinal. So whether that's Christianity, Islam, Judaism, very doctrinal, very much a believer in the book. And I wasn't really absorbing, I think, the lessons that there are in these old texts. So I didn't get this idea from religion, but I do think I don't know if it's exactly from religion originally, but it applies in where religion is best interpreted. And it's these tenets of life that you should follow because there's tremendous precedent and self-evident evidence that they are true. For example, I heard somebody say the other day, and I don't know if this is true, but it sounds true. The most common piece of advice throughout all religious texts is a version of don't be afraid, which is all throughout history. If you talk to old people today, they'll say, their biggest regret in life was being too afraid to do what they wanted to do in some way or another. And so what does that mean? Well, what does it mean to act in spite of fear or despite fear? That's courage. So what is courage? Where are there examples of courage? How important is courage? Okay, courage is clearly very important, but in order to be courageous, you have to be honest. You have to know the truth. So one example is like the tenets of Stoicism is courage, wisdom, justice, and discipline. All of those things are great. So there's strands that go all throughout religion and philosophy and lived experience. The reason I mentioned manosphere, although I couldn't even define it for you, I think if I had to define it, I would say it's different people's attempts to try and wrap their head around male culture. And there's different elements of it. Some are good, some are not so great. Demonstrating courage, demonstrating discipline, bringing significantly other people on that demonstrate these things. So if you want to talk about discipline, look at somebody like David Goggins or Jocko Willink. If you want to talk about courage, look at somebody like Paul Rossley or Francis Ngannou. And so I've learned from all these people, Chris Williamson, another example, James Smith, wasn't on, but referenced. All these people have really informed my life. And so I've built this system, is what I call it, of life operating system from other people. I think it comes from like an innate interest in history. So I also apply that. And it's just a conglomeration of people that have done things, said things, and it proves to be true in some cases. Some are more obvious than others. I mean, being honest with yourself, honesty, courage, and discipline, I think are big ones. Agency and self-awareness. If I had to have a Mount Rushmore of like 5 to 10 things, I have one that I wrote down that I offer to people, and it's still a work in progress. I change it over time as I learn more, but there are clear operating systems for how to live. The problem is when they come into conflict with your emotions, when you're afraid, when you're comfortable, when you're insecure, when you're anxious. Those are the things that destroy truth. And it's a never-ending battle you wage.
Yeah, it's a constant testing, iterative process. You're not done. You're not fully baked at any point until
Never.
you die. The difference is that it sounds like your people, these virtuous and agentic people, are striving towards better, as opposed to unwilling to consider their principles. Because we all have principles, we all have beliefs. Like that's what this whole podcast is about. We all exist within systems and we all believe something. You can't not believe anything and you can't be nowhere. So your people are the ones that are considering them, that are thinking about what they believe and how do they live in line with those beliefs, and then are willing to consider outside information, willing to broaden their perspectives, and then actually take action on some level. Because none of this happens, meditating on a hill is the reality.
I would argue, actually, that would be a great idea for a lot of people. The problem is what would happen if you do that is you would encounter the truth, and then you would want to run away from it if you weren't prepared for it. I think there's 2 ways to live in basically anything. And even if it's not perfect, it's helpful. Same as religion, flawed, but very helpful if applied reasonably. You can either live a comfortable lie, a comfort-seeking life of deception and falsehood, or you can live a life where you strive with courage to live in line with the truth, honestly. That's really anything you do. And no one's ever going to be perfect. I tell people this all the time. There is no perfect. And also, when you practice courage, for example, over something you're afraid of, don't get this idea that the courage now defeats fear forever and you're never afraid again. No, you'll be afraid forever. It's wired into you from evolution. All these things I think come from evolution. We're just old human practices. And so it's not a defeat. It's not a war with a decisive end. You won the battle today. That's why they say one day at a time, one step at a time, one action at a time, one decision at a time. Keep going. And momentum is huge. That's why most people, I mean, you go into the nuance on this. People say the hardest thing is starting. I don't think that's true unless you haven't started. If you've started, I think most people would say the hardest thing is putting out a tremendous amount of effort far enough along that you can't turn back, but not far enough along that you are where you want to be and not getting the feedback. But most people don't get there because most people have never started. So 0 to 1 is the most difficult thing. And I see it all the time. People want to talk the talk. They want to think the thoughts. They claim to be ready to go and about that action. And then it comes time to do something and they just can't do it.
Yeah.
They don't do it.
From like the conceptual to the practical, that's a big leap. And that's why I feel like saying that none of this happens meditating on a mountain is
Right.
good. You need to do that step, but then you can't reach enlightenment. Let's say you think you've reached it, sitting on that hill and meditating, and then you end up in real life, someone cuts you off in traffic and you've lost your mind. Like it needs to come into the real world. Like, where's that enlightenment now? Where's your patience now? Where's your humanity now? And I think that's where I always say, like, religion is not limited to the houses of worship. You're not inside the mosque or the synagogue or the church, all holy and loving. And then you step outside and prejudice and irritated and unwilling to learn. So like, where is your religion then? Or where are your principles then? So it is, like, as you said, just like a constant iterative process, and life is always going to test you.
I sometimes feel like an insane person, and this is why I take one day a week off of basically everything. Much as, the gurus will say somebody's going to outwork you and work that day. Okay, fine. I don't care. I have to take a day off from the technology because it's just so much computer and phone. But sometimes I feel like an insane person because my feed is now so curated to these types of people that are either ahead or behind me in this space of striving for these types of ways of living. And so I just read this all day, whether it's Sahil Bloom, Tim Denning, Justin Welsh, Jay Yang. I mean, some people have heard of, some people haven't. And they just keep saying Matty Fusaro is a personal trainer who's a great writer on Instagram. I just read this all day and I just feel like a lunatic. It's all I hear. And then I encounter regular situations and I'm like, what is the matter with you? I was talking to my cousin actually yesterday. He was like, yeah, social media. He's a smart guy. He's a little older. He's in his 50s. He's talking about how social media is like very curated to flash and glamour and this and that. And I said, what's really interesting about social media? Social media is its own universe on every single phone because that's what you see. But if I showed you my social media, you'd be like, who are all these people? Where these accounts are about history books and elephants and philosophy and business. I don't follow any of these accounts. Not a single one. I don't know any of these people. I don't know any of the people on his phone either. So if you took like the 10 phones of like the people closest to you and looked at all of them, I think most people would be shocked. And so that's another part of when I talk to people is I send them Instagram accounts. Like, follow this person, follow that person, you need to curate your inputs. You are a product of your inputs. So it goes back to the education thing. You are your friends, you are your social media, you are the food you eat, you are the environment you're in. It's a huge part of being who you want to be is surrounding yourself with those right influences. Otherwise, you're swimming upstream and it's a losing battle.
Yeah. You are the thoughts you think. And if your thoughts, as influenced by your environment, as influenced by the people around you and the media you consume, are not taking you where you want to go, not opening your perspective, not contradicting anything you believe, unlikely that you're going to change because there's no contrast. Like, there's nothing
Right.
to offer any friction. And without friction, there's no growth. Like, muscles don't grow without stimulation. Okay, that's the best example I can think of. Like, your muscles you can visualize all you want, but at some point you're going to have to pick up a weight. You're going to have to stimulate the tissue somehow.
There's a Marcus Aurelius quote, I think, that says, be strict with yourself and be kind with others. You have to, because as you get older, you learn acceptance. I remember in my late 20s, at one point, I really started to embrace this of where I had people that I was really close to and cared about that were struggling with things that objectively I had the solution to. I mean, this is like, it had nothing to do with me. I just had a solution to their problem and they just weren't interested. And, you know, you can't bring a horse to water. And that's just the world. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier about homeschooling and education. Much as I would like for everybody to get on board, there's not enough space on the ship.
Yeah.
So if you want to get on, you'll get on. Plenty of people don't. And they're welcome to grovel and snipe as much as they want.
But that's also the flip side of agency, right? Like you have agency, but you also have to respect the agency of others. And agency to make mistakes, agency to make completely wrong decisions in your eyes, but it's the path that they're on. And the more we try to control other people, I think, you know, we were talking about parents earlier. The more our parents are invested in controlling us, the less happy we'll be. The more we try to control our children, the less happy we will be, because ultimately a healthy child is going to have a sense of self. And if we perpetually squash and mold them, they might be exactly how we want them to be, but chances are they're not how they want to be. And they will be not just unhappy, they'll be under functioning in society. They'll be unlikely to thrive. They'll be unlikely to contribute. And we repeat like an unhappy cycle. Is there advice that you would have taken if you were younger? Let's say law school, you went to law school, you weren't quite sure why you were there, but you were there. If you could have given yourself advice at that time, what would it be, and would you have taken it?
I wouldn't have taken it. I just assume you would never take advice in the past because you're a different person. So I automatically assume I wouldn't have taken it. If I was in law school, if I had to give myself advice in law school, it's tough because at this point, I'm really grateful for where my 20s went. I have all this experience to pull from. But if I were to go back to when I was 18, so real fresh, but the point of that sentiment is do the boldest thing you know to do with where you were at. So at 18, I didn't necessarily have all these interests that I do now, but that elephant thing was there. And that's what I would have done. I don't know where it would have ended up, but I would have advised that. And it would have been a totally different life. It would have been a totally different person, but that would have been cool.
So basically, don't be afraid. Do the big thing.
No, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. It's so huge. It's honestly annoying. Understanding what happens one way or the other. So you either live afraid and do nothing and are just a prisoner to it, or you find out, you go forward with these things. You understand fear is never going away. And so you either have to conquer it or it's going to conquer you. There's no other way around it. Okay, now it's time to stop talking and thinking and actually do something. And there is no pep talk thing. Steve Harvey had this clip on YouTube that I watched. One of the favorite clips I've ever had was like him in a parking garage, him giving an analogy about you got to jump. Whatever version of success you're after, success being subjective, you have to jump. And he says, when you jump, your wings or your parachute will not open at first. So you're going to fall, you're going to stumble, you're going to crash. But eventually they will open and you'll soar and you'll be that person that you want to be. And he says, but here's the thing. You'll never be that person if you don't jump. So you can stay on the cliff comfortable, but you'll never succeed at what you want. And that applies to other things. But the last part is big. You have to be decisive. You have to learn how to be decisive. And it's so terrifying because it's so, like we were just saying, it's fun to think and talk, but pulling the trigger, woof.
Yeah, because that's the decision. That's where the consequence comes. Intended or unintended consequence. And you have to be okay with that ambiguity. That like it might go your way.
Yeah.
And it might not go your way. And you have to be okay with either outcome. Even if you want the positive outcome.
So my biggest thing about fear and courage, my favorite quote, super short and from one of my favorite people in history, Churchill, is fear is a reaction. Courage is a decision. Done. That's it. Do that or live a lie.
Wise words to end with. If people want to find you on the interwebs, where can they do that?
Jacob Templar on Instagram, Jacob Templar on Substack, Jacob Templar on LinkedIn more recently. Started posting on there for anyone that really wants to see it. And then hello@jacobtemplar.com if you want to chat.
This was great. I'm looking forward to hearing about your upcoming trip to Africa whenever you're able to make that happen. Let me know how traveling for that long with someone else goes.
100%. Thanks for having me. Maybe I'll jump back on after that trip, give you some fresh tales from the greatest part of the world.
I have a feeling that there are many podcast episodes we could do.
Yeah, I hope so.